How you doing? Oh, awesome, thanks for letting me know.
What's your business?
Sorry, do you mind identifying yourself, please?
Right. All my details are there for you to see. That's my shoulder number. I don't have to do anything else. Right.
2656, and yourself, can you identify yourself, please?
Yeah, my number there.
Okay, how can I help you?
Right. What is your purpose for being here now?
Pardon?
What is your purpose for being here now?
I don't answer personal questions.
Okay. Do you realise what building this is?
Yes.
Right, and you're filming.
Yes.
Why? I'm going to ask you why that is.
I don't answer personal questions.
You don't answer personal
No, is that a crime for me to film on public pavement?
Well, considering...
Sorry, it's a yes. It's a yes or no answer. Is it?
Potentially.
Potentially. So what crime do you suspect me of committing?
Okay. It all depends on what you want to use the footage for.
Really?
Right, so let me explain to you. So if this is a reconnaissance
okay,
for a planned entry later on,
okay,
or to identify the movements of the personnel working here, to identify when the security are at one particular location and when they are at another location. If this is to figure out ways in which you can access the building, then it's obviously potentially criminal.
The officer approaches with a noticeably confrontational tone, treating TLA as though wrongdoing is already assumed simply from being present in a public space. The suggestion that filming a building could be a crime is then raised, which immediately becomes the central justification for the interaction. However, that claim is not straightforward. Recording buildings or landmarks from a public pavement is generally lawful, and there is no blanket rule in UK law that makes photography in public spaces a criminal act in itself. The concern arises when that lawful activity is presented as inherently suspicious or potentially criminal without reference to a specific offence or clear legal threshold. In that context, the statement risks blurring the distinction between lawful behaviour and unlawful conduct. Without a clearly articulated legal basis tied to specific facts, the justification appears to rely more on interpretation and assumption than on a defined statutory power.
Talking dribble, man.
Pardon?
You're talking dribble, talking nonsense.
Explain why it's nonsense.
How do you know what I'm doing?
No,
you don't
didn't say I know what you're doing.
I didn't.
Hang on a minute. I didn't say I know.
No.
You said.
So if you suspect me of doing that,
yes.
What grounds do you have to suspect me of doing that?
Right. So, under the Terrorism Act, I have a right to check their phone for the footage, right? Okay. And if I believe it contains any terrorist evidence, I can actually seize that phone. Okay. I can do that.
So what part of the Terrorism Act are you going to use?
Section 43.
Section 43.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So what are your grounds for using that?
Right.
You need to have grounds, articulable grounds.
My grounds are if I have reason to believe that you are obtaining the footage so that it can be studied later on to figure out the weak points.
Yeah, okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
When the security officers are not alert, what time they're leaving, what time they're starting, so that you can plan an entry at a later time.
Right, okay.
That constitutes a terrorist intention.
So how does viewing my footage give you that information? Because I've been around filming the building and I've stayed on public...
The invocation of Terrorism Act 2000 Section 43 in response to someone simply recording in public raises questions about proportionality and the basis for suspicion being relied upon. Section 43 is intended for situations where there is reasonable suspicion of involvement in terrorism-related activity based on specific and articulable facts. Suggesting that ordinary photography in a public space amounts to scouting for a serious offence is a significant inference, and would normally require clear supporting indicators rather than general assumptions about intent. The concern here is not the existence of police powers themselves, but how they are applied in practice. When a broad and serious legal framework is referenced without clearly identifying the factual grounds that justify its use, it can create the impression that the threshold for deployment is being lowered beyond what the legislation requires. Counter-terrorism powers carry a high legal threshold precisely because of their seriousness, and their application is expected to be closely tied to objective reasoning rather than generalized suspicion.
We haven't been here to see what you've been doing.
Right, okay.
We've been caught saying that you're filming.
Yeah.
So if I looked at the footage, hang on a minute.
It's filming a crime.
If I looked at the footage and I believe that you are watching personnel, you're trying to figure out the weak spots, entry points.
Is this all for a man with a camera? Is that what you're here for as well? That's ridiculous. Totally disproportionate.
So why don't you tell me, if you tell me what you're doing, we can at least make an informed decision.
I'm filming the MI6 building.
And what is the reason?
For my own personal purposes.
Well, you've got to understand, sir, it's a protected site.
So let's
see people filming it.
I'm not being detained at this moment in time.
Okay, at this particular point in time, I'm going to ask that I have a look at your footage.
So I'll ask you again,
Yes.
am I being detained?
Yes, you are detained for the purpose of a search. Yes,
For the purpose of search of what?
Because I'm going to have a look
Okay,
at your
and
footage.
what section are you using?
43 of the Firearms Act.
Terrorism Act. Okay, get it right.
Yes.
And what are your grounds for that?
Because I've explained that two times.
But have you read the Met guidance on public filming?
No.
Have you read the Met guidance on public filming?
Right. Are you obstructing the search?
I'm not obstructing the search, no.
Detaining someone under Terrorism Act 2000 Section 43 would require a genuine and objectively justifiable basis for reasonable suspicion linked to terrorism-related activity. The threshold is not met by the mere act of recording in a public place, which on its own is ordinarily lawful. The key issue being raised here is whether the officer can clearly articulate the grounds that led to the use of such a serious power. If those grounds are not clearly explained or appear to rely on general assumptions rather than specific facts, it raises questions about proportionality and proper application of the legislation. The additional reference to obstruction further complicates the situation. An allegation of obstruction would normally require clear evidence of interference with a lawful duty, not simply disagreement, questioning, or the exercise of lawful activity. When multiple justifications are introduced without clear, consistent grounding in observable facts, it can give the impression that the reasoning is being adjusted in response to challenge rather than being firmly established at the outset.
But what I'm saying is, have you read the Met's guidance on public filming?
I don't need to explain what I have done to you, what I haven't done. I have the powers to do what I'm doing now.
Okay.
I've explained to you why I'm doing it. Right?
You do realise it's a bit unlawful?
No, it's not unlawful. If you believe it's unlawful, you can make a complaint.
I will do it, 100%.
You have all my details.
I'm not being aggressive, I'm not trying to be hostile, but you're currently trying to infringe on my rights, so...
No.
Well, you are 100%. You're misusing...
You asked me the section.
Do you know why Section 44 was repealed? Do you know why Section 44 of the Terrorism Act was repealed?
I'm not here to have the discussion.
Do you know why it was repealed?
I'm not here to have
because of situations like this.
Right.
Because you're abusing your power, sir.
You are entitled to make a complaint.
I will make a complaint, yeah. And there will be a civil matter in relation to that as well.
I've explained to you why you are filming an important building, right? And I've said the grounds are, if I believe you want to study that footage, so that way you can ascertain the weak points, so you can ascertain the movements of personnel that work here, so that you can know the best time to enter, that constitutes a terrorist intention.
I can't validate or repeat claims that a specific officer is acting illegally or in bad faith as fact, but I can help you frame the legal point more accurately and clearly. In UK law, a power like stop and search under Terrorism Act 2000 Section 43 requires reasonable suspicion based on objective facts, not assumptions or speculation.
Video.
Oh, okay.
To see how that footage is informing you. If I believe it's
this
just
is crazy.
Of the area,
this is insane.
If I believe you're watching personnel, you're trying
to. So you're going to abuse your powers to find out. No, you are 100%.
It gives me the powers to look at it.
Yeah, but you're abusing it. There's no grounds, but because I'm filming. Right. Okay. Because I'm filming in public.
First of all, let's get some details. So
I'm not giving you my details. Under Section 43 of the Terrorism Act, I'm not obliged to give you my details, sir.
Okay.
Okay, you understand that? So you won't find any ID on me.
You don't have any ID?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm detaining you under the Terrorism Act. So I'm going to search you. Take your hands out of your pockets. Let me see your hands. Keep them where I can see it. Just hand over your gun.
1 second. I just want to pause this. 1 second, so that you can view it. Yeah, you do.
Pause it. This one.
It's still recording. Yeah. You need a court order to delete any footage. Do you understand that?
No, I'm not deleting.
Okay.
Help me make an informed decision based on the content. Because the content was quite intrusive. That's why I had to make that decision.
Can I just tell you something, right? You've used Section 43 of the Terrorism Act. Yeah. You need to have reasonable grounds to enforce that. A man with a camera, it's clear on the Met's website, is not grounds to stop someone under Section 43 Terrorism Act. No. So you've made yourself liable. So,
like I said, the grounds were the fact that you were filming a sensitive, a protected
that's
site.
That's not a crime. People film Buckingham Palace. What about dash cams going past here?
The request for personal details became a key point of contention during the interaction. The officer appeared to be seeking identification as the situation progressed, while the individual challenged whether there was a clear legal basis for that request at that stage. Once the search concluded without any items being found, questions naturally arose about how the initial grounds for suspicion were formed and how the powers were being applied in practice. This is often where scrutiny focuses in stop-and-search encounters, on whether the threshold for intervention was properly met at the outset and whether subsequent actions remained proportionate. The exchange highlights a broader issue in public understanding of police powers. how quickly situations can escalate, and how important it is for all parties to understand the limits and scope of those powers in real time. School. The interaction raises questions about how counter-terrorism stop and search powers are communicated and applied in practice. Once no evidence is found linking an individual to terrorism-related activity, scrutiny often shifts to whether the original threshold for using those powers was properly met. Under Terrorism Act 2000 Section 43, searches must be based on reasonable suspicion formed from objective facts, and those grounds should be clearly articulable at the time the power is used. If an encounter concludes without any supporting evidence being found, it can prompt debate about how that initial suspicion was formed and whether it was proportionate. There is also a broader issue around public understanding of filming in public spaces. In general, recording in public is not unlawful, but misunderstandings about this can sometimes contribute to tension during policing encounters. In situations like this, accountability typically depends less on the outcome of the search and more on whether the legal threshold and reasoning were clearly established and communicated from the outset.
But the thing is, in order to ascertain whether it's a crime, it depends on the nature of the See, the crime itself is the terrorism. So
Right.
filming is not
So you need to have reasonable grounds to
No,
suspect
but
of a terrorist.
the filming is a precursor to the crime.
No, it's not. Filming is not a crime, sir. Filming.
No, I said
Right.
precursor.
Right.
It's a precursor to the crime. What I mean by that is, you don't wait till the building's blown up. You intervene at the point of the person preparing for it.
But you need no, I get what you're saying. Prevention is better than cure and all
Exactly.
that. But you need reasonable grounds, and what you had wasn't reasonable grounds.
It is reasonable. I mean, we obviously we can argue
go around in
all day
circles
about
all day,
this,
100%.
yeah,
Yeah. I've just got one thing I need. Well, two things I need to say. Your colleague told me about his camera. Part of your policy, you're supposed to tell members of the public first opportunity, and you didn't do that.
We get another call that you hear the same thing's going to happen again. And we're just being a cycle, isn't it?
We'll see what happens.
So my advice is please move on.
Yeah, I'll move on. I'm going to stay on public because film for
No,
public.
you're allowed.
And I can point it at the building.
Okay, see, the
But I
thing
can
is,
because you know I'm not here for terrorist purposes. That was the purpose of your
I
search.
don't know that yet. I've taken the video off you, which would have helped you do that. But once you start looking into it,
Right, I'm not going to do that, okay? But I am going to film the building from public, from here.
The statement in TLA's bio suggests that the interaction was not intended to be the end of the matter, and that further action or accountability may follow in relation to the stop, the use of counter-terrorism powers, and the request for personal details. However, despite discussion and attempts to trace any outcome, there is no publicly available information confirming the result of any complaint or legal claim arising from the incident. That leaves the situation without a documented resolution. A key point of contention during the encounter was the officer's reliance on concerns related to observation from public space and whether that alone could justify intervention. From a legal standpoint, being in a public place and observing what is visible from that space is generally not unlawful. Under Terrorism Act 2000 Section 43, any use of stop and search powers must still be grounded in reasonable suspicion based on objective facts. Where those grounds are unclear or disputed, it often becomes the central issue in assessing whether the stop was properly justified. The overall incident therefore raises broader questions about how counter-terrorism powers are understood in practice, and how expectations between police powers and public rights are interpreted during fast-moving encounters.
I'm not going to go up there
the thing
again.
is, if one of them call us again and because they believe that you're filming intrusively, we'll be back and do the same thing again.
But if I'm in public, then that won't matter.
If you're filming intrusively,
What's defined intrusively?
if you're filming into a private ground, because this is public,
Right, but you
that's
can.
private ground.
Okay,
Now
so
it's one thing just doing, I'm taking landscape pictures. But
Yeah,
when
yeah.
you start looking
No,
into
but listen to what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, right? If you lived on a street where people were able to drive past and look into your living room, what would you do?
It's called voyeurism.
What would you do if people were able to drive past your house and look in your living room window? What would you do?
That's called voyeurism.
Close the curtains.
Because you are watching me do private.
No, but
private things.
if you can't help it, it's in my
I'm
line of
nice,
sight.
man.
Yeah, whatever.
My advice is to
Listen,
move on, because
there will be a complaint
if
and there will
I-
be civil claim against you because
I'll
what
give
you've
you my
done,
detail, that's fine.
what you've done
But
is
if we have
it's
to come back
unlawful,
this
sir.
time,
You've
they
infringed my rights.
No, I
You
haven't.
have
I've explained
100%.
everything I've done.
No, but it's
I've
illegal
explained
what you've done.
everything.
It's
No, it's not.
unlawful.
It's not.
Yeah, you didn't have
when you
legal
make the
grounds.
complaint,
We're going to stand here arguing all day. You need to walk away.
no. So I've said to you, if they have to call us again, we'll come back. We'll do the same thing all over. So it's in your best interest.
Well, every
to
time
me.
they do it, it's fine.
Have a
Because
nice
if you
day.
keep doing what you're doing, you'll have another claim against you.